I am sitting here with Gina Sweet. I'm so excited to talk to her today because your career trajectory is amazing. You started at American Eagle, you moved through Spotify, you even worked at Pop Sugar and Bustle Digital Group, and now you're at Babylist. So your trajectory is something very amazing that a lot of professionals want to learn more about. How did you do it? What were the risks? All the good things. Thank you for joining me on Break Room.
I'm so happy to be here. Truly. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, Gina's energy is so great. We've gotten connected through a mutual friend and mentor. And just as soon as I met you, Gina, your story is truly remarkable because it's all about resilience and risk. So I want to just take a step back and let the listeners learn about you a little bit and your overall career story. And then just excited to dig in more. So please tell us, where did it all start?
It is wild. And it's funny too, because really looking back and telling it all at once, it's like, wow, I did a lot of change. And to your point, a lot of personal change beyond just, career. But to kind of set the scene, so I was born and raised in a small suburb outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So not the, biggest industry capital of the world, if you will. And I really always saw myself in something like fashion or writing. I had these big dreams. I wanted to be an actress. Well, I wasn't going to move to California and do that. So then maybe I'll do broadcast journalism. I don't want to do that. And so, right, as I'm going through college and thinking about my next step and being in Pittsburgh, I had no intentions on leaving. Like I was a lot of people in my town, you grow up, you go to college, you come back and you start a family of your own and then rinse and repeat. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I always had this voice in the back of my head being like, there's more to see outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So before we get to that, so Pittsburgh is the capital. Oh my God, the capital. Pittsburgh is home of American Eagle Outfitters corporate office. And so that is what I had my eye on. I want to work there. It's young, it's cool, it's hip, right? Fashion. It just not ever really working in the workforce yet. It just seemed like the dream. And so my mom was like, oh, I know somebody who knows somebody. I could get you an interview. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Can he get me in for this HR position? Later, I find out, well, no, he can't get you an interview for that, but he can get you an interview on his team, which is transportation. Okay. So is this 20? Right. Yes. That's the perfect way to put it. And as a 23-year-old, about to really start my life, I was like, wait, what? I'm going from an actress to transportation specialist. But you know what? I had, beggars can't be choosers. And I knew that I just wanted to at least get my foot in the door. So I went for it. And I got it. And I will never forget showing up on my first day of work, because here's the other thing. Not only was it in the transportation department, which is probably not the farthest from the departments I would have wanted to work, it was at an entirely different place. It wasn't at headquarters. It was at a distribution center.
I was going to say, you're out in the DC.
Yes. So I walk in and it's because if you see the actual American Eagle office, it's so new and modern and upgraded and, but walking into this warehouse, it's all these old school cubicles and maps on the pinned up and stuff. And I just remember being and I was replaced. So I got hired to replace someone who was retiring. And all of the people on my team were, I would say this, other than myself and my other coworker that ended up starting right around the time I did, I think the youngest person was 50 something. Okay. So I'm right. I'm just looking at my dream of what I had in my head, what I envisioned for myself. And I'm is this a joke? I could have not pictured anything more opposite. And what's so funny is I know that those women looked at me when I walked in on my first day, probably being like, oh my gosh, who is this girl? Straight out of college, young, probably doesn't know anything. I know they definitely had their ideas about me. But I was like, no, I'm going to win these people over. They're going to love me. So I did. I started forming these relationships with these 50, 60, 70-year-old women, and they became actual friends. We had a really good relationship. We kept in touch for a long time, even when I left Pittsburgh eventually. Not so much anymore, but it was like a true little family feeling. Even though the job, as you said, was not sexy, I was talking to truck drivers. It was really nice to be able to hang up the phone and turn and be like, oh my gosh, let me tell you what happened. And they were so invested. I could talk about my relationships, and it was almost like having just a fun grandma or a fun mom, It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you pivot from that? Because again, a lot of people earlier in their career or later in their career that feels that stuck moment, that's like, this isn't
Yes.
for me. But then where do you go and how did you transition and grow from there? Because your next move was pretty big on several levels, from like not only location, right? But then like company as well, and role. So that's like three big industry switches that
Yeah.
don't ultimately line up.
Yeah. So actually, there was one in between before I actually left Pittsburgh. So, as I said earlier, I just wanted to get my foot in the door. So, in the back of my head, I was always thinking to myself, this is temporary. This is a stepping stone. It's going to just keep me here and I can meet people and start networking until the right opportunity comes. And so, we had an internal job page. And so, I saw a store communications coordinator in the store ops team. So, this would be, we're writing the comms to all of the stores, telling them like what the promotions are going to be and da da da. And so I was like, I want this job. So I was really nervous to tell my boss because I had been there for like a year. And, I'm like, hey, can I go somewhere else? I don't want to be on your team anymore. I didn't say it like that. But, I said, hey, I'm really interested. I'd like to go for it. And he was like, yeah, sure. And he said that because he didn't think there was a shot in hell I was going to get it. So he was like, might as well not, ruffle feathers. Like, sure, go for it. And what was super fascinating, like this is like the first, I think, example of building relationships is going to get you farther than you might think. So the store operations team, almost every single person that worked on that team, at least sometime in their lives, worked in an American Eagle store as a associate, cashier, whatever, RVP, whatever the district manager. I did not have that experience. I worked in retail before, but not at American Eagle. And they really wanted somebody from the store because they just felt like they would just naturally fall into the role easier because they know so much already. And so I knew I had that working against me, but I just, without the experience, right? Because I'm right out of college, I knew I had to stand out. So I made a website for myself. And this was back before Canva. I think it was Wix. Do you remember Wix?
Yes.
.com.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? I haven't been on there in a minute. So yeah, so it was a Wix, and it was I put it in my thank you letters. I was like, after the interview, if you want to like learn a little bit more about me, here you go. And I remember somebody writing back being like, this is cool. Like, I see you. So yeah. I knew it was working, and I kept getting more and more down the interview process. And then finally the hiring manager was like, we want you to go to an American Eagle store and sit with a manager. And we want to, get your ideas on what you think about these things, how we could change it, how we can make things better. So I did that. And I came back, I talked to the final like VP, and I got offered the job. And I was so amped. Like, I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is what it was all for.
Yeah.
I guess the important thing that I left out is when they were considering hiring me, it was between me and an actual store associate. I later found out that the heads of the team, of the store ops team, were talking to district managers and people in the field that I was on the phone with as a transportation manager.
Got it.
And they were saying like, oh yeah, like Gina, we're considering her for this role. And I love Gina. She's the best. She's so helpful. And that, I can tell you, is the reason I got it. I really believe that. I think they would have went with somebody else if I didn't have those, people already kind of knowing me and vouching for me. And so I was just, I was stoked. And then I had to tell my boss, I got the job. I mean, obviously he was happy for me. I stayed within the company, but so then, yes, I moved to finally HQ with among the young people. I was working with the merch team and, business development. It was very different, and I learned a lot, and it was pretty like fast paced, but I was happy to be there.
So that got you a step closer into communications, and then you made the big pivot to New York City. Tell us a little bit about that, because I've done the move to New York City, and it is not for the weak, let me tell you. It's a beast of a city. Yeah. It can swallow you whole, or you can grow and thrive, which obviously you did. But tell us about that, because I mean, a move to New York City, like I said, it can be a risk because it's so expensive and overwhelming that, again, it could be too much for people, or it could propel you. So talk a little bit about that.
No, that's everything you said is so true. And I alluded earlier about how I always kind of saw more for myself. I like this bigger city and my Carrie Bradshaw moment because I'm like, well, if other people can do it, why can't I? It's possible. Yeah, it maybe isn't likely, but it's possible. So when I was kind of toying with the idea, I was actually another friend who said, "Hey, my husband's job is hiring for this role in New York." And it was in media. So it had nothing to do with anything that I was doing. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll apply. Like, what harm is it gonna do, you know? And so I eventually went through that process and I got offered the job, which I was like, holy, I was almost when it was starting to become real, like when I thought I could get the job, I was starting to panic because I'm like, I'm going to have to make this decision if I'm going to
Yeah.
move to New York or not. I almost wanted the decision to be taken away for me. I wanted them to not offer me the job, you know?
Easier. Yeah,
Yes,
it's easier.
exactly. So I didn't have to wrestle with it. Yeah. So I got the job, and mind you, my parents are from New York. They were born and raised in New York, and they were like, "Why would you ever want to live in New York City? Like what?" So they weren't the most encouraging, if you will. So I didn't really have this, this people behind me being like, "Go, go, go!" And I mean, gosh, leaving friends, leaving everything I've ever known. I'm 24 at this point. So a couple things. First, there was a guy. It's always a guy. I was like head over heels, and he was like, "I'm so sorry, I can't date you because you're gonna just be in this little town forever. Like I'm gonna be traveling the world and doing more." And so part of it was a little bit out of spite because I'm like, "You think I can't leave? Watch me."
Yeah.
But the bigger part, I would say, is this mentality that I kept saying to myself, okay, 10, 15, 20 years from now, if I say, and I look back at my life, do I want to say, man, I tried New York and it was not for me, it was rough? Or do I want to say, man, I wish I gave New York a shot. I wonder what it would have been like if I lived there. And that enough was my answer because I can't stand the idea of not knowing what could have been. I'd rather try something and it not work than not try at all and just wonder what if. And so I was like, you know what? I don't have a family. I don't have kids. Like, right. This is like the time to be risky. So worst case scenario, I leave. Yeah, it's not ideal, but if like let's give it a shot. And if I don't like it, on to the next. And so I started to kind of look at my life that way, where it was just like the next step. What's next versus well, where is this going to get me in 5 years? Because from transportation, now I'm in media in New York City. I could have never predicted that. So I went for it and I got this job. I literally knew no one. Like it was crazy. I look back now, I'm like, how did I do that? I just had so
And
much.
when you say got this job, side note, it was for Spotify, correct? Or was
This
it?
was no, I know there's a lot of jobs in between. My first step into a media agency. It was called Collective. It was my first step into media, but I didn't even know what an impression was. Like I didn't know what a CPM was. I didn't know all of these very, very common terms.
Media.
And I got hired once again based off my personality. So because right, like you can't teach a personality. You can't teach somebody how to be inquisitive or how to work with their coworkers, but you can teach them how media works. And so
Yeah.
that's what they saw in me was like, we want you, and then we'll teach you, the role. So I was there for about a year. And I became very close with all my coworkers. I was even they voted for me for employee of the month for my communication. I know. I was like, this is cool, like because it was like a peer nominated thing.
Yeah.
And so after about it, I would say like maybe like 6 months in, I was like, I don't see this for me long term. I just, like you said, it was very fast paced. People weren't as friendly as I like need them to be. I'm very much like off like body language and smiling. And so when people would just be like, what do you want? I'm like, oh my God, I'm just a little girl trying my best. So I knew it was going to end, but I guess I just didn't know what was next
Yeah.
because I don't want to go back to Pittsburgh. That's kind of defeats this whole purpose of like seeing what's out there. And so during that time that I lived in New York, my parents relocated to Dallas, Texas, because my dad worked for the airlines.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, Dallas seems cool. Let's go live in Dallas. Starts my job search. And that is when I got the job at Spotify.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
That is okay. So then And I want to call out a key thing here that I'm listening to, though. I think that so many people could learn from is your vision is so essential. Then your vision and that reputation you built based on true relationships and showing up
Yeah.
authentically is more important than any to-do list, title, anything sometimes that you could focus on that people do, right? Like that niche down of I want to be doing this, I need to be doing this. And it's like you have this greater vision, which I could not I understand it so deeply. I had the same vision leaving Cleveland when I grew up as well. And it's like when you have that ahead of you, when you have something that North Star and that you don't know how to quite get there, but you have it, it really creates this fuel and it creates this ability to just like plow through all the kind of crap
Mm-hmm.
and obstacles to continuously get you there. And so I hear that in you and I love it so much because so many people don't have that. And then they wonder
Yeah.
why for 5, 10 years they're like stuck because
Yeah.
they're only focused on that small little step, whereas you were focused like let's just go
Bigger
big.
picture.
And yeah,
You
I
know,
love
that's such
that.
a good point. And I feel like somebody told me back in college, maybe it was a professor, but it doesn't matter what you know, it matters who you know. And I took that really seriously because, like again, I'm from a small suburb. My parents, I'm first gen college. Like it's not like I have this network of people waiting for me. So I had to build that. And even if it was an instant, like I think back to how many people I've called that I haven't worked with in 5, 10 years and been like, hey, I saw this. I'm interested. What do you think? And it's like, oh, I'd love to refer you. I mean, like these people, especially I would say in the media industry, I can't speak for every industry, but the industry is small. And the fact that everybody knows everybody. And so reputation is everything. And the fact that I was kind of starting that super early on and I was seeing where it was taking me. I was like, okay, I got to keep we got to keep this up. I got to keep investing here because it's clearly paying off.
Right. And I mean, okay, so you were not only at Spotify, which huge world
Yeah.
renowned company,
Wild
right?
time.
So talk about that because I mean, think about like you said, small town girl in Pennsylvania, kind of, you go into New York and now you're at Spotify. Talk through
Yeah.
that because I want like the inside details of that experience and then it got you into more media and growth.
Yes. So my first words of wisdom is write the cover letter because my cover letter is what got me this job. This was the only job I got without knowing somebody in my entire career, but I was almost passed over. And then the my coworker who was on the hiring team was like, "Well, wait a minute, let's read her cover letter," because they saw my New York address and they're like, "Why is this girl in New York applying to live in Dallas?" No, next.
Yeah.
And in my cover letter, I had said, "I'm moving to Dallas. I'm planting roots. I'm really interested in this job." And thank God, because it really, like, I would say Spotify was the beginning of my future. It was the craziest of times in the best way, because this was before Spotify went public. And it was just becoming like super popular. We were growing so fast. There wasn't this like, oh no, how are we going to meet quota this month? It was like, we're crushing it. And so, yeah, so I moved to Dallas. I started working for this company. And I remember thinking to myself, because I had a 1 bedroom apartment in Dallas. I could afford a 1 bedroom apartment in Dallas with a pool and a parking garage. That was even less rent than my 2 bedroom, like tiny apartment in New York. So I was like, yes, this is it. The weather was warm, the sun was out. I've made it. This is where I want to be. And I'll never forget our RVP came down because Dallas was technically a remote satellite office before remote was a thing. So we were a satellite office. We reported into the Chicago office. So, and together we made up the Midwest region.
Okay.
So I was constantly going to Chicago, and if we had like these big on-site trainings, they would fly us in because there was 3 of us, and like the bigger team was in Chicago. But I'll never forget, my RVP came down to see us in the remote office, and he was like, "Gina, we were talking. He's like, you gotta entertain these clients more. We gotta get more entertainment." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, you're asking me to take people out to go drink and I'm going to get paid for it? Is this real life?" Right? Because I'm like, this is the dream. And I think that's where my personality and my relationship building really shined, was because it wasn't just in my company anymore. Now we're going out. Now I'm forming relationships with all these media agencies and these media brands, and going on meetings, taking them to these events. And I love the feeling of, well, I guess two feelings. I love the feeling of like walking into a room and seeing somebody that knows you and it's like, oh my God, Gina, hey. Like, I just love to know that I've made an impact enough that you know who, like, you remember me and we built some kind of a connection. And then I also love when somebody tells me, oh my gosh, so and so told me about you and they said you're great. Like, who doesn't want to hear that? So like, again, it comes natural. Definitely. I'm definitely a people person, but especially in that role, like, I like to make people feel special. I like to make people feel good. So anytime I was with my clients, I would always just be talking them up, just, I don't know, getting them excited and to work with us. And I built like actual relationships along the way.
Right. And that energy obviously carried through to more growth for you, right? And again, going back to that underlying theme of it isn't always about sometimes the tasks you do, but truly about how you've made people feel. And your trajectory grew from there. So you ended up from, you grew into Bustle, where then you got into, you were on the sales team and then went into marketing.
So Pop Sugar came first.
Pop
Pop Sugar. Yep. So I got a job in
then,
Chicago at Pop Sugar and then Bustle and then Baby
Bustle.
List.
And talk about, okay, so the biggest takeaway too from Bustle was you transitioned again, like a whole function, right? Because you were under, and then they're like, talk about that, because the transition across functional areas, let me highlight, is not easy. Yeah. Again, so many professionals maybe don't know how to go about it. And so you bring up your story is so valuable because you've made these moves, not only again industry, but the function of it, meaning like a marketing to sales or a transportation into communication. Talk about the Bustle one, the pivot.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because you're right. Like, these are different functions, but there's so many through lines that I think apply that I was really just trying to focus on. Quick, just context. So I moved to Chicago next because, funny enough, I met my husband at Spotify. So yes, now husband, I should say. So when we started a long distance relationship, I eventually moved. So I found myself getting a job at Bustle Digital Group as a sales rep. So before that, I was on the like AM side. So it was a lot more of, like campaign setup and kickoff calls and things like that, like the post sale. And a lot of people would always tell me, they're like, Gina, you do so good in sales. You should try sales. You'd be so good at it. And I'm like, well, if I can make more money, sure, why not? Yeah. And so a friend, here's another example. A friend was like, I know somebody at the Chicago office. Let me put in a good word for you. Got through, got the job. So now I'm at Bustle, and this is October of 2019. So timing is key here.
Yeah.
So I just started, and for sales, we have one job. It's to bring in revenue for the company. And the first sales shop, I was building a book of business. It's not like I was bringing clients with me. So I was definitely getting some momentum, but around like March, April, there was something called COVID-19 pandemic that really took the country by storm. Little something, layoffs were starting to happen. This is right in that time. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to get laid off. Like, I just am. I don't see a world in which I'm not. Maybe they won't lay anybody off, but if they have to lay somebody off, it's going to be me. I've only been here 6 months. I haven't signed a contract with revenue. Like, why wouldn't they? It would be silly to lose somebody else, versus me. And I just remember I kept telling my boss that. He'd be like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, well, other than the fact that I'm probably going to get let go, I guess I'm good. And he's like, why do you keep saying that? And I'm like, it's just common sense. Well, I was correct. I got a call, and I've never been laid off before, knock on wood. I've been very fortunate. So I never had I didn't know what was coming, but my RVP was like, hey, I tried to call you. Can you give me a call? And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh yeah, because I talk to her every so often, just in my day to day. And I answer the phone, or she answers the phone, and she goes, oh, I hate having to have these calls. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm holding the phone up, right? And I'm typing my husband. I'm like, I'm getting laid off. I'm about to get laid off. Because he was in the house, in a different room. Yeah. And she, I kind of like blacked out for a second because I'm just like, wow, this is a new experience in the worst way. And she said, her exact words were, your role, we have to eliminate your role, but we do not want to lose you. We want you to stay at BDG. would you be willing to stay in would you be willing to go back to account management? And without a second, I was like, yes, yes. And it's funny because in full transparency, I wasn't loving the sales role for myself. I don't love that pressure that I think some fuels
You like
people. I'm a
naturally
little,
like the
yeah.
relate.
Right. Like if you say, no, I'm not interested, I want to say, okay, so anyway, tell me what you're up to this weekend. Like, I don't want to keep pushing. So I was like excited. Like I was like, wow, this just fell into my lap. Like, how lucky am I? What I later found out was they as in my leadership of sales, reached out to my Pop Sugar leadership, said, hey, tell me about this girl. Like, what do you think? And they were like, she's the best account manager, one of the best account managers we've ever had. We love her. And so that I think was enough kind of fodder for them to actually make a head count for, like, there was no head count. I wasn't, it wasn't like I was just taking a role. They actually made it for me so that I wouldn't leave. And I ended up becoming, again, just like a really valued resource on the AM team, moving my way up. I stayed there for 5 years. Like, it was a really, really good experience. But I always think back, like, wow, if Pop Sugar didn't say those things about me, maybe I would have been let go. I really think that a lot of these small little conversations where people are vouching for me, I think those are the reasons, or like at least cemented the deal. If it was, they're on the fence, it's like, okay, that just made our decision.
Right. And like what I'm truly hearing again is it's about that energy you're leaving behind. And that's like a personal
Yes.
brand, right? I think a lot of professionals don't really know how to quote unquote like create a brand because people, if you say that personal branding, people are like, do I need a logo or colors? Like,
Yeah.
no, you just need to lean into your strengths, which is exactly what I'm hearing you've done throughout your career. And it's such a big takeaway for anyone listening to this and myself of just the impact of just knowing your strengths and actually leaning into it and like not straying or like straying away from that, right? You truly showed up as yourself, you know what you were good at, and that left an impact. And so again, this is just me iterating, just a learning from listening to of just how amazing that brand can be. And then I guess I also have a question before we even end on baby list, but like during all this change and transition and all these things, while it sounds fluid and easy, what was one of the biggest challenges through that decade of all
It's a
of this?
great question. I would say I don't feel like this is anything groundbreaking, but just constantly starting over with a new job, because we all love to be experts. We all love to know what we're doing. And so when you finally get to that point, and then I'm like, just kidding, I'm going to start over again. That was always just really, really difficult. I don't like the feeling of not knowing what I'm doing. But it also opens an opportunity to connect with people, because to your point, when I'm thinking about like the brand, I was not going into these jobs with this, what am I trying to say? Not cockiness, I guess a little bit. Like, I wasn't going into these jobs being like, watch how amazing I am. You're going to be so lucky.
Yeah, it's like
right. Like, I went in being like, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy I got this job. Thank you for considering me. Like, teach me. I'm ready to learn. And I found that is always, I would say in most cases, that's a very appreciated attitude from people at the company, because then it's like, hey, you're so good at this. Can you help me? And they're so much more willing, right, to be like, yeah, sure, versus like, no, I don't need your help, do it wrong. And then you ask them for help. They're like, I thought you didn't need my help. I always just used the not knowing as an opportunity to get closer to people and to learn about what other people do. Yeah. And I do think that was part of it. So I guess
curiosity, yeah, that's like what I'm hearing.
Curiosity, like, yes.
You truly led with curiosity, which again, during uncomfortable moments, not everyone does. And like imposter syndrome is what you're talking about, right? Like, oh my gosh, yes. I never feel like I'm good enough or know what I'm talking about enough, but it's like you were really constantly starting over and having to rebuild that. But again, like leaning into, for anyone listening, it's like leaning into, again, you might not know all this list of things that you're going to learn, but you do know one thing, and that is, again, yourself and your strengths. So I love that. I think, again, all those changes can feel very imbalanced and scary, but
yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's important to keep that confidence, because to your point, it's really easy to be like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. But you got hired for a reason.
Yeah.
They see something in you, you know what you're capable of. So yeah, just keep that confidence and it all starts to fall into place.
Yeah. And then that true strength. And to kind of wrap up, your career is long from over, but where you're at now is your mom era. You're thriving. Baby
Some
list.
days.
We're surviving.
Some days are surviving. Yeah. Yeah.
More so the surviving. 2 kiddos, you're at baby list, which is obviously like high growth. I myself as a mom use baby list all the time. So talk to us a little bit about this new part of your life where you are now again part of a new industry.
Yeah.
And also navigating a lot of growth in this.
Yeah. This was definitely my hardest transition to date, to no surprise. I was at Bustle, like I said, for about 5 years. I had both of my sons during my time at Bustle. On my second mat leave, though, a lot was changing in the company, a lot was shifting. And I'm like, you know what? I think this is my time to start anew. And so on mat leave, my friend helped me get an interview at Baby List for an AM job. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's go for it. I ended up getting this job. My first day at Baby List was my second day back from mat leave. Okay. So this is like my first experience having 2 kids, and I wasn't ready. Like, I didn't prepare myself enough for how big of a transition. I think because I already had a kid, I thought maybe like, oh yeah, I've done this before. I know what to expect, but no, you don't. 2 is a lot different than 1.
Yeah. It's a whole different world. I can't even. Yeah.
Yes. So looking back, I think I put a lot of extra work on myself, like stress of just trying to navigate all of this change. But what was even more kind of tough was Baby List is different than any company I've worked for. So where I'm very used to kind of coming in and having these transferable skills and understanding like the basics, especially later in my career, right? Like at the Bustles and the Pop Sugars of the world. This was like a net new experience for me because Baby List is a platform, it's an app that has multiple revenue streams. It's not just a media publisher. And so as my role, I interact with the site merchandising team and the product team. And that's just something I was never exposed to. So all that to say, I was humbled a little early on. I was like, okay, all right, I really am starting from scratch. And it's a fully remote company as well. So, it's not like there's like somebody next to you just to pop over. But I spent a lot of time just trying to absorb. They had a really great onboarding where like a 30, 60, 90, where you had to set up one-on-ones with a list of people. And I got really great advice. But Baby List is an extremely successful company and they hire top talent. And so it's very like, try to think about imposter syndrome. That's where I had it the most, where I was like, you are all so smart. How did I get hired? And that's when I had to remind myself, okay, like, wait, there's good things about me. No, I know what I'm worth. Yeah, I know what I'm worth. So I've been there about 2 years now, and I feel like I'm definitely on the other side. I find myself starting to, I'm helping other new people and answering questions, and I've built really good friendships and a good reputation for myself. So I feel good.
That's
I'm like,
amazing.
yeah.
I love your story so much. And it, we have never like met IRL, but like we've talked a couple times just virtually through, again, like a common amazing person in our life. And your story to me, I was so excited to talk with you because, like I said, I think a lot of us get in our way from growth, and you truly like get out of your way and you really allow yourself to lean into that reputation and that brand that you are going to continue to carry along. And I'm so excited to just see your career, but I also think you have so much to just you've accomplished. And the story here again is so many learnings that we've talked today, and I'm so appreciative of you being here. And I also want to shout out that Gina has her own podcast too, from like a parent side. I want to put in our show notes. Can you tell our listeners really quick just about a little journey as well?
Yes, I started a podcast with my friend. It's called Grace. Never heard of her. And it's really just about just that, where this whole momming, career, relationships, friendships, everything, we're trying to navigate it all and we're really hard on ourselves. And so we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace. So it's just us really kind of talking through all those challenges and just being super raw and real about it.
Yeah, we need more. I need more of that in my day to day. But thank you so much again. I've learned so much from you, and I know others will as well. And I'm going to drop your LinkedIn so people can connect with you. But thank you so much for being here. You are truly amazing, and appreciate everyone listening to Break Room this week. Thank you, Gina.
Thanks, Brittany.